Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out to listen to this presentation. It's so nice to have you all here, and I love the fact that you are curious. So before we get started, I want to kind of give you the lay of the land. I will be presenting for about 40 minutes, and then there will be a time at the end for a question and answer session. You're currently all on mute. But at the end, if you'd like to ask a question verbally, you can just raise your little hand, and I'll see that. I'll unmute you. You also have a chat box, which you can type in any questions that you have as we go along, which hopefully I can answer. I'm going to ask you right now if anyone is having difficulty hearing me. So if you are, please go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, it looks good. All right, so we're going to get started here. So today I'm going to be talking obviously about your thyroid. I'm going to be talking about the gland itself. And the gland itself looks a little bit like a bow tie that you're seeing here, or some people think it looks like a butterfly. And I'm going to talk about its function in the body and how important it is to every cell in your body. So it is the master metabolic regulator. And every cell in your body has a receptor site for thyroid hormone. And the receptor site is on your cell's nucleus. So that means that your bone cells, your heart cells, your lungs, your brain cells, all need thyroid hormone to function well. So every single function in the body, the metabolic rate of each cell depends on thyroid. We mostly think of the thyroid in terms of energy and weight gain, but it's far more reaching than that. It influences, as I said before, brain function, but it also influences cholesterol levels, ovarian function, so think about fertility, hormone function, cardiovascular disease, bone density, so think about osteopenia and osteoporosis here. That could be an underlying cause. Diabetes, arthritis, and much more. So the thyroid and its hormones is very far-reaching, and we need to understand it from a holistic approach, and that's what I'm going to give you here. And one of the alarming things about all this is that according to a couple different doctors, well, more than that there is about 40% of Americans who have low thyroid, and the majority of them go undiagnosed. So a lot of stuff that's going on with them, the underlying cause and how to fix it probably isn't being addressed. In this presentation, you'll hear me talk about 3 important organs or body systems that contribute to thyroid health. And you heard me say that we take a holistic approach, and we have to do that, and we have to look at these different organs and glands. We don't want to grow meat right yet. And understand how they contribute to the proper production and utilization of thyroid hormone and how it gets to the rest of your body. So we're looking at the liver, we're looking at the digestive system, and also very importantly the adrenal glands. But before we do that, yes, we're going to meet Sarah. And some of you already met her if you read about her on my blog and the invitation to this webinar in the beginning. You found out why she came to me. She came to me with the following symptoms. She had hair that was dull and was falling out. She had low energy and she used caffeine and sugar to keep going. She had difficulty losing weight. She had low sex drive. She had slightly elevated fasting blood sugar levels, chronic constipation. She was slightly depressed, and of course she craved sugars and breads. And there are more symptoms than that for hypothyroidism, but those were her symptoms. But you can also have migraines, and the underlying cause would be dysfunction of the thyroid gland or thyroid hormones. You can have a link to cancer, heart disease, arthritis. Circles under your eyes are a symptom. Infertility can be a symptom, and that's heartbreaking. Diabetes, ovarian cysts, and even heavy periods. And as we go through the presentation here, hopefully you'll understand and make the connection between all of these and your thyroid hormones. I would like to interject here that thyroid dysfunction definitely affects many women, but children and men also are affected by it too. And sometimes we forget to look at that, and I've been guilty of that as well. In fact, I had a patient that came in this week, and I'm thinking I really need to look at the function of his thyroid and thyroid hormones. Need to have that measured. So I do want to give you a little bit of background. I think it's important to understand what's going on in the body so you can start connecting dots with different tests and when we talk about things. So let's do that here. So there's an axis, a three-pronged axis. It's called the hypothalamus, pituitary, and thyroid axis, or the HPT. And the hypothalamus talks to the pituitary talks to the thyroid, and then there's this feedback loop from the thyroid back to the hypothalamus. And what's happening here is the hypothalamus, if it senses or the message comes to it that the thyroid needs to produce thyroid hormone, it will release thyroid-releasing hormone, so it talks to the pituitary, and then the pituitary will release thyroid-stimulating hormone to stimulate the thyroid. Both the hypothalamus and the pituitary are located in your brain. The thyroid, again, is located in the throat area. And I want to say here that it's amazing how powerful this little hormone is, or gland is, but the hormone is only about 1 grain of salt. That's about the size of it. But it has an influence on so many different functions in the body. So the hypothalamus is like the puppeteer, okay? It's the one that's running the show. It's like your thermostat, so either turn things on or turn things off. And if there's problems with the hypothalamus, and we'll talk a little bit down the road what possibly could cause problems, but mainly stress can cause problems with the hypothalamus, then we could have wrong kind of signaling. If any of you have ever had your thyroid, and I say that in quotes, tested, many times the only thing that's tested is your TSH. That's it. And the TSH is really what's measuring what's going on in your brain, because the hypothalamus and pituitary is in your brain. It's not measuring what is happening throughout the rest of your body, the production of T4 and T3. And I want to go to the production of T4 and T3. So when the thyroid is stimulated here by the thyroid-stimulating hormone, it produces 2 different types of hormones, T4 and T3. T4 is an inactive form of thyroid, and we produce about 90% of the inactive form. T3 is the active form. Now the T4 has to go to the liver in order to activate into the active form, or the form of T3. And it's the T3 that all your cells will be able to utilize, not the T4. That's very important. And I want to talk about, real briefly, what exactly the thyroid molecule is made of, the hormone is made up with. So we have T4. Basically what it is 1 molecule of tyrosine, which is an amino acid from protein, and it's 4 molecules of iodine attached to that. T3 would be tyrosine and 3 iodine molecules attached to it. I would like to interject here that one of the things that can interfere with this, right here, the attachment of the iodine to the tyrosine to make the T4 or T3, would be fluoride. And fluoride is in most of our water now. It's actually a neurotoxin, and it can interfere in many different aspects. So please drink filtered water. I also want to comment on iodine. Some practitioners kind of get stuck on iodine, and iodine is kind of a Goldilocks effect in that if you get too much, you're going to have problems. If you have too little, you're going to have problems. So just to reach for tyrosine and iodine in order to balance out your thyroid is a good chance you're missing the mark and causing more havoc. And by the way, there will be some supplements out there that are designed to support your thyroid, and often it will have tyrosine in it, it will have selenium, vitamin A, and probably a little bit of iodine in it. And the problem with a supplement like that is we're not finding out really where the thyroid needs to be supported, or where the thyroid hormones, where the glitch is. And I've been guilty of giving that to my clients as well. I hate to say that, but I learn all the time as well. All right, so let's go and start looking at some of the organs that play a role in keeping your body healthy and being able to use thyroid hormone. So liver is a big one here. What happens in the liver, it produces something called thyroid binding globulin. This is the place where that T4 is converted to T3. This is where one iodine molecule is actually removed. And then it also produces something called reverse T3. And this is to keep the T3 in balance. Your body cannot utilize reverse T3. So the liver is extremely important as far as making the thyroid hormone available to you. If the liver is congested, it's not working properly, you're going to have a problem with all of these mechanisms going on. And the thyroid binding globulin, the purpose of that is when the thyroid produces the T4 and T3, it needs to be bound with something so that it doesn't go into the cells and be eaten up. It has to be bound so that T4 is actually taken to the liver and delivered to where it needs to be. If we have a problem with our adrenals, which I'll go into, and cortisol, we can have, and if also we don't have enough selenium and we don't have enough vitamin A, this conversion of T4 to T3 can be interrupted. And often what we'll see, especially if adrenals are involved, we'll see an overproduction of T3, reverse T3. And that means not enough regular T3 is going to be produced, and that's going to be a problem. And you can't reverse T3. So I always ask my clients to ask their doctors to have the TSH measured, T4, T3, and reverse T3. So let's take a look at how your digestive system plays a role in all this. So we have the T3, comes from the liver, and about 20% of our T3 is actually converted into another form, T1 and T2. And if what was required of that is good bacteria to be activated into that form, that 20%, that's a huge percent when you stop and think about it. If you have an overgrowth of bad bacteria, not enough of the good bacteria, we can't make that conversion. I think that's one of the reasons why we possibly see subclinical hypothyroidism, and what that means is you might take a blood test, and the levels look fairly decent, but your symptoms say otherwise. And I think part of that could be is that 20% of the T3 that's not being able to be activated because of what's going on in your gut may be missing. It might be just enough to shift things around. So we might have enough T3, and that's what we're measuring, but that T1 and T2, which we really don't measure, cannot be available to you. I often will take my clients off of sugar and gluten and put them on a probiotic, and often that is not quite enough. I often do other things too, but that's a big factor of shifting those symptoms around. If there is a dysbiosis or overgrowth of bad bacteria, often we will see gas and bloating and brain fog. And so those are some indications that there can be problems coming from the gut. And we can often see food sensitivities and even leaky gut. And I am going to get into leaky gut here. Leaky gut is where the space in between the cells of your small intestine have been inflamed for one reason or another. It could be food allergies, it could be yeast, it could be overgrowth of bad bacteria. But that little tight juncture has been loosened, and actually little particles of food can go out into the system, and all of a sudden you have allergies to different types of foods. And there is a very similar barrier in your brain as well as what you have in the gut. So the gut, we've got a barrier. We want to make sure we keep certain things in the gut, not let it go out to the outside of the body. Same thing with the barrier of the brain. And if there's a problem with the gut, there's often a problem and a leakiness in the barrier of the brain. So very important. All right, let's go look at the adrenal glands. The link between cortisol and thyroid. So let's look at some of the symptoms of a dysfunctional adrenal gland. We could have hair loss, dry skin, and we can have dry skin with hypothyroidism as well. Fatigue, weight gain or loss, depression, anxiety, hot flashes, you're tired but wired, you get that little fat roll around the middle, and blood sugar regulation as well. So a lot of the same things we can get with hypothyroidism. And if we just treat the thyroid and we don't treat the adrenal glands, we're doing ourselves a disfavor because it's masking what's happening going on here. It's kind of pushing everything from the thyroid, and we have to kind of back it up to what's happening in the adrenals. The adrenals are an extremely important gland in the body, and we don't want to cover up possible indications of a dysfunctional adrenal gland. So I'm going to show you another diagram after this, but what I want to show you here is that when we have high cortisol levels through various different types of stress, the conversion again of T4 to T3 is interrupted, and that's a problem. And you can see here, and again, this is happening in the liver, and we need the help of selenium, zinc, and vitamin A in order for that conversion to happen. Here's another diagram that I want to show you, and I want you to be able to make the link between this. So this is your adrenal gland axis, okay? It's the hypothalamus again, the message center, the thermostat, pituitary, adrenal axis, very similar to the hypothalamus, pituitary, and thyroid axis. And right here we can see that stress can interrupt these signals on either one of these axes, okay? Either the hypothalamus on either one of these. We're going to look here at what's happening. Let's say we have hypercortisol production. We can have a problem with that right at the TSH, okay? So excessive cortisol levels can interrupt the message from the pituitary to the thyroid. It can also interrupt here, down here, where we'll see more reverse T3. And then this down here, you're going to have a problem also with, okay, right here, cortisol is a I can't say that, steroid. So it has a direct relationship with maintaining glucose balance and blood sugar regulation. So I want to talk about sources of stress. I think sometimes it's pretty obvious to us and sometimes it's not. So fat cells alone can cause inflammation, and inflammation is definitely a source of stress. Fat cells produce something called cytokines. So even if we have an excess of 10 pounds or more on our bodies, that can actually increase the inflammation in the body. So we want to keep our body weight where it should be, and also our body composition, so not just our weight. And I do realize that when there's a problem with the thyroid, that can be a catch-22. I get it. So there's many other places we can look at for sources of stress. Obviously, an overgrowth of bad bacteria is going to be inflammatory as well. Inflammation from a leaky gut, food allergies, all this is inflammation. Okay, so this would be on a physical level. So this would be internal sources of toxins and inflammation and of stress. If there's a loss of any kind, a divorce, a death, moving away from friends, whatever that is top on the list here. Stressful job, and that includes being a motherhood. It's inflammatory and increases cortisol and affects our adrenals. Too full schedule, too busy. Any kind of trauma, and we forget to include physical trauma in this. I think it's pretty easy for us to associate and link emotional trauma to stress. But how about the physical? And I mean, it can be an illness, it can be a surgery, it can be any type of accident or injury. So especially guys will come in, oh, no, never had anything happen, I'm fine. And then I find out that they've been in a traumatic and horrendous automobile accident, 3 years ago. And it's like, oh yeah, I need to know about that. Any type of change, it can be good or bad. So let's say you have a new job, a job promotion, you move, you get married, you have children, all of that. These change. Toxins that come into us via our skin, pesticides in our water, fluoride, and then also endogenous is not the word I want, but the toxins that we create through our digestive system in particular. Okay. Too much exercise can also be a source of stress. Under-exercise can be as well, but my type A people who do too much exercise, I don't think they realize that this can be a source of stress and can be a source of messing up their adrenal glands and therefore kind of tipping the scale on thyroid hormone at some point. Pregnancy. So pregnancy, there's a lot of different hormonal changes going on in that. It's stressful on the mother's body. And if you've had 2 or more, it's even more stressful. And then also you have the interruption of sleep and all that, and that's very stressful. I can put sleep up here, but we have to get good sleep. Hormone imbalances and changes, like in pregnancy, but also anytime during your life, hormone imbalances, and that can happen at any time. Our perceptions and our thoughts also contribute to stress as well. And I'd like to just pause here and add to this, or food for thought, that the role that many women take on in our society, being a breadwinner or staying single or working fairly high stressful jobs, getting things done, looking for performance and results and outcome, that's a very masculine way of operating, and it takes testosterone to operate that way. Now, that's not to say that we can't operate that way, but I think there has to be a balance. And I think many women have found themselves in a place where they are exhausted. And it could be exhaustion from all these things I put up here. But I think it can also be exhaustion from not being able to stay in our femininity, where we need to nurture and we need to allow things to be. So masculine needs to produce, the feminine side needs to nurture. And sometimes I think we go through life till we're about 40 or 50, probably more like 50, And we don't give that other voice, that feminine voice, enough time, and I think that adds to a lot of stress. So I'm going to go on, and I am going to talk about Hashimoto's disease. I've been talking basically hypothyroidism, but this is a part of it, and many people who have hypothyroidism have Hashimoto's disease. It is a disease that attacks the thyroid gland specifically. It was discovered by Hikaru Hashimoto in 1912. I think he's a very handsome looking physician there in Japan. And I want to talk about the differences and similarities between Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism. And actually also reference what's happening to any autoimmune disease, including arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, celiac disease, Crohn's disease, and type 1, and it goes on. So basically what happens with the autoimmune disease is this. There's usually a perfect storm of many stressors either at once or a hammering of stressors over years. And again, these stressors can be either physically or can be physical or emotional. And what happens is it finally pushes the immune system into overload because it's trying to cope with so much. And the immune system basically gets confused and starts to tag or attack an organ in the body. And in the case of Hashimoto's, it's tagging the thyroid. Much like the non-autoimmune hypothyroidism, managing the disease is about the same. I do want to note here that once there is an autoimmune trigger, you cannot reverse it, but the symptoms can be managed. Hashimoto's typically involves a slow but steady destruction of the gland that eventually results in the thyroid's inability to produce sufficient amount of thyroid hormone, the condition known as hypothyroidism. So if it's allowed to progress, we've got a problem. If we're managing symptoms, the thyroid will go back and forth. We can see that. It can cycle between even hypo and hyperthyroidism. And sometimes we can see periods of anxiety, insomnia, diarrhea, weight loss, followed by periods of depression, fatigue, constipation, and weight gain. And then also, it can be followed by feeling pretty darn good. I'll pause here for just a second. Okay. All right. I do want to talk about conception and pregnancy in the thyroid because I think it's very important. I mentioned it earlier how each cell has a site for thyroid, and I think it's really important for people who would like to conceive and are having a difficult time that this is not ignored. I think it's so important. I think it's so often ignored. So let's start with T3, which, if you'll remember, is converted in the liver. T3 is responsible for taking cholesterol, which is so vilified, and which we make. The majority of the cholesterol that we have in our body does not come from the outside, externally. It's made internally in our liver. So the T3 is responsible for taking cholesterol and converting it into progesterone in bile cells. So let's talk about progesterone for a moment. It's essential for hormone balancing. So if we see people that have heavy periods, a lot of mood swings around their periods, thyroid could actually be part of this. It's essential to increasing the progesterone levels that's needed for conception and also to maintain pregnancy. Some women can conceive okay but have numerous miscarriages, and this could be part of the reason. There's not enough progesterone. And think of the word progestation and progesterone. So that's where the word comes from. A woman should want to have her thyroid hormones working optimally before becoming pregnant. So being tested is very, very important. And then when we talk about the bile salts, where the T3 also is part of, that's part of being able to digest fat and utilize fat. And remember, hormones are based on cholesterol, made from fat. Many times nausea and morning sickness can be associated with low T and bile salts. And the bile salts affect the hormone storm that's occurring during pregnancy and can contribute to the nausea. So what tests should you ask from your doctor? You should get a full CBC test with ferritin markers. I often see CBCs without ferritin markers. I think it's really important so we see your iron stores because it's important in the makeup of T4, of the thyroid hormone. Yes, we need to look at TSH, but it's not the only thing. And then we need to have T4, free T4, and free T3 measures, and then of course the reverse T3, so we can see if there's too much T3 being made and blocking the production of T3. Too much reverse T3, blocking the production of T3, and possibly where the breakdown is, perhaps is the adrenals. And then if we're looking to see if there's Hashimoto's, then we want the TPO antibodies tested as well. Another way of testing, I didn't put this up here, is by testing through basal temperature, axillary, underneath the arm. Normal is about 98.6. If you take your temperature about mid-afternoon, and this is when your body should be, moving along here. If you have a reading in the low 98s or 97s, that's a pretty good indication that you probably have hypothyroidism. So that's another way that you can test. You can take this over the day, a couple days, or even weeks, and kind of see where your temperature hovers. You can hold the thermometer underneath your arm for about 10 minutes. I want to go back to the iron here, ferritin markers. So we do need iron in order to, along with the iodine. And it's important that we look at the RBC, functions of the RBCs, which we'll get in this as well. And if I see something happening with the size of the red blood cells or the number of the red blood cells, I often will then go to, I wonder what's happening as far as vitamin B12 status. That's something else you can ask for your doctor. And also folic acid status. And I don't like using blood to get folic acid status for many reasons. That's a whole other lecture. But I like to see that. Additional testing that I really like to do, especially if there seems to be digestive issues, is the stool panel from Genova Labs. The test is, they're changing. They're just in the process of changing their tests that they're offering. Right now it ranges from 99 to about 165 or so. They're changing it till everything that we want will be 99. I think it's going to change at the end of August. And that is good with insurance unless you have Kaiser. I mean, all HMOs unless you have Kaiser. And there's one other, I forget. I often like to see a urine panel as well from Genova Labs, either the one panel or the organics acid panel. That will give us a good idea of what's going on as far as toxic loads, as far as heavy metals, which will give us an indication on how much we have to support the liver. It will also give us an indication of status of B vitamin, carbohydrate metabolism, and energy, which all is part of what's happening with the thyroid as well. I do like to often do the salivary adrenal test versus blood because then we get to see 4 different samples because the saliva is tested 4 different times during the day. That ranges from 120 to 160. For some of my folks who really have a hard time with their digestive system after they've eliminated some of the top 5 foods that cause problems, and I do have a lot of my patients go on an elimination diet and then reintroduce things back in. IgG food testing can also be done. Let's see. So care for thyroid hormone dysfunction. So let's go through that. I've given you a good idea how to identify it, what causes it. So what do we do now? So first of all, it would be to make lifestyle changes, very important. And this would be nutritional and dietary, identifying food sensitivities, better regulation of blood sugar because that affects adrenal glands and cortisol. And removing gluten. Gluten is often a hormone disruptor, so just get rid of it for a while. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't sensitive. But even if you aren't sensitive, what's going to happen when you remove that gluten that we're so used to eating is you're going to learn how to put in some good fats, which we definitely need, and also probably some more grains. That's what I'm hoping for. That's usually what happens when I have people take gluten out of their diet. It just changes the whole way they eat, as long as they don't replace it with gluten-free junk. On occasion, it's okay. All right, getting regular and good sleep is so important. If you're not doing that, then we need to make some changes and maybe even give you some natural remedies in the beginning until we can go underneath what's causing the disruptive sleep. You need to slow down and honor that. When your body says slow down, honor that. Journaling and meditation, yoga is a wonderful way of slowing down. You need to move your body, but not too much. Having connections with supportive people in a community is so important to our well-being, especially women. It just is. Notice your ants. What I mean by ants is automatic negative thoughts. They crop up. Be aware of them. Oops, let's go back. And notice if you're hypervigilant about things and your need to react to things instead of to pause and respond. So that needs to shift. Take out as many toxins as you can and drink filtered water. And then the other thing we want to do is to test and rebuild the adrenal glands. And then also test and repair the gut if needed. Boost liver function and in the immune system with things like infrared saunas, gentle liver cleanses, and also supplements. The supplements I like to recommend is a broad spectrum mineral. Often our minerals can chelate gently to help pull toxins out. We really need more magnesium. Most of us are magnesium deficient. We need selenium as well, zinc, probiotics, and other types of supplements for gut repair. Always use an activated B vitamin. That means it's methylated. It will say it's methylated on the supplement itself. The B6 will be in the form of pyridoxal biphosphate. But anyway, active B vitamin. We need our fat-soluble vitamins as well, our A, E's, and fish oils. And then consume living foods. Use living foods as medicine. It's a cheaper way of healing. Sometimes we can heal just with food. If we're really over the top, lots of times we need supplements for a little while. But eating seaweed and kelp for iodine, you can even get kelp powder, dandelion greens to give you some vitamin A. Source of selenium, which we don't get too much of, would be even just a couple of Brazil nuts a day, scallops, herring. Fermented foods, of course, for your digestive system. Making coconut yogurt is really easy and simple. Look for that online. Making kombucha. I've never made it, so I don't know how simple it is, but you can buy it. And also consuming sauerkraut, not the jarred kind, but the raw, fresh kind. Kimchi as well. Beef and or chicken, bone broth, or even fish broth is very, very restorative to your digestive system. It supplies minerals as well. So this is a wonderful way of both getting immunoglobulins that your digestive system needs and minerals that your body needs as well. Drinking teas to calm, so sometimes it's a less expensive way to get herbs in you that can calm you versus taking a supplement. Green tea is wonderful as a detoxifier. Turmeric to reduce inflammation. Coconut oil, we need more good fats. Lemon peels, the sort of limonene that's in the lemon peel can also help with detoxification. Cilantro is a great little herb as well. And always, always use organic and grass-fed, especially when your body is compromised. Please, please, please. It's worth the extra money. All right. I gave you a lot here, and we're at the end, believe it or not. If you're looking, whoops, a lot of information, and I'm going to try to post this on YouTube if you want to listen to it again, because I went through pretty quickly. If you'd like to know more, if you feel like you would like to have some help in finding out whether or not you have hypothyroidism or how to treat it, I have a private practice in Irvine. I'm also available via Skype and phone to reach anyone anywhere. I'd also like to say at this point that my website here has a lot of different things. It will have a lot of different things posted. It just got launched, my new website, which I was combining my blog with my website, and I'm still in the process of moving some of those articles over into specific categories. But touch in there, and if you would like to receive my newsletter that I send out monthly, you can do that by signing up at alivingbalance.net. Usually I have some nice recipes, or one recipe that I send out. Also a post about either thyroid, something about wellness in your body that hopefully you will find interesting. A book that I would recommend for you would be by Dr. Datis Karazian, and it's called The Thyroid Book. So that might be a really nice resource for you as well. So I am going to, at this point, open up for questions and answers. Oh, one person needed me to speak up and I didn't catch that. I'm so sorry. I'm hoping the rest of you were able to hear okay. All right, so if anyone has a question, raise your hand or write in the chat box, and I'll try to answer them. So either I overwhelmed or I underwhelmed. I don't know which, because there's no questions here. So since there aren't any questions, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and just tell you thank you so much for being here, and I hope it was helpful, and I wish you luck. All right, in health and in peace. Good night.